Hi there, my name's Ian Wright, and this podcast is called Why Is My Baby Crying? I have some experience in crying babies because I spend a lot of my days with babies who are abnormally crying and are distressed and have colic and reflux and other forms of kind of irritation caused by birth and delivery and shock, etc., etc. So as a new mother, especially with your first child, it's incredibly distressing, as a father for that matter, when your baby's crying, especially when the child is inconsolable, you can't stop them crying, and you're tired, and hormonally, especially mothers, they're primed very deeply, and also deep within some of the primitive centers of the brain, to respond instinctually to stop a baby that's in distress. You know, this is our instinct. This is how we grew and evolved to keep the babies alive, to proliferate the race. If a child or a baby animal is in distress, we want to do what we can instinctually to stop their distress. And so when we're in those situations, when we can't calm a baby down, it's a problem. And I just want to talk about why is my baby crying, try and decipher this complicated area. So a baby normally, it's absolutely normal for a baby to cry between 1 and 3 hours a day to some degree. They cry for a variety of reasons, the most obvious being hunger. Babies have small tummies and they need filling and they need feeding every 2, 3, 4 hours, etc. They have these strong hunger receptors in the stomach that causes a very direct signal into the brainstem saying, I need to eat, full stop. And they will, the cry will exponentially increase until the hunger is sated. Other normal reasons for a baby crying are if they're tired and they need sleep. A baby will cry. It's a slightly different cry. It's more quiet and, as opposed to a hunger, which is, I need it. Another reason is a baby needs winding. I've done a video podcast on winding babies. Check it out on the website, Dynamics of Stillness, and how to wind a baby. Well, in my kind of view on the best way of doing that. Other reasons why a baby cries is they're too hot or they're too cold. Now check the back of their neck to see if their temperature is high or low. And other reasons, obviously, their nappies need changing, or they're bored and need a cuddle, or as they start to get a little bit older, teething. Now, these are absolutely normal reasons for babies crying. What I suppose we're interested here is trying to work out when a baby is crying for pain or something is distressing them. And so, first of all, we have to rule out, to some degree, medical issues that we need to go to the doctor or straight to the hospital for. Certain factors are involved if a baby is inconsolably crying. Now, if they have a high temperature, for example, 0 to 3 months, if they're above 38 degrees, there's a problem. They have a temperature, and it's a problem, and you need to see your doctor. 39 degrees, a little bit higher, between 3 and 6 months, because they can have a temperature when they're teething after 3 months, and it's not it's not a problem. Other reasons, if they have any difficulty breathing, any problems with breath, or if they're abnormally lethargic, or their appetite completely goes off the rails, or they're excessively vomiting, diarrhea, or constipation. These are times when you need to get the baby checked out. Other times, of course, it's more the area that I tend to look at, where there's things like silent reflux, or colic, or shock, or retained kind of distress almost from deliveries. So silent, they have slightly different cries, but they cross over, and actually some babies, I think, can have reflux and colic as well, which is pretty distressing all around. So a silent reflux, they don't necessarily bring anything back. Actually, they can bring a little bit, they can posit a little bit of clear fluid, but not necessarily anything. They tend to do this. They feed, but they'll only take a certain amount of it, and then the weakness in the gastroesophageal valve, it starts to come back into the esophagus and irritate it. They tend to want to feed a lot, because actually if there's any acidic reflux that comes back into the bottom of the esophagus, that can be calmed by milk in the esophagus. So they tend to want to feed, so they excessively feed but can't feed. It's a complex sort of story. They tend to have sudden cries. They suddenly scream or yelp from nothing to full on terribly upset out of the blue. And that's literally, I think that's a reflux story. These babies cry more when they're lying supine. They have to be 45 degrees up, but they can be absolutely inconsolable. Absolutely inconsolable. They're normally better if you hold them upright and hold them on their tummy, around their tummies, warm their tummies, but they're very hard, and that's the time when you need to see someone like me, an osteopath, where we need to try and sort out that kind of issue and look at what's causing the weakness in the valve. Colic is classic colic is a slightly different story. It tends to not be during the feed, it tends to be after the feed, maybe 20, 40 minutes after a feed, or up to 2-3 hours after a feed. It tends to be, and I don't know why, worse between 6 and 10 p.m. in the evenings. It tends to start after about 3.5 weeks old, not necessarily at the beginning, and they can be inconsolable again. But it's not a sharp thing, it's more steadily inconsolable kind of pain. Now, these things, these are generalizations that I've found from working for years with babies. Everyone is different. But what we're really wanting to work out is, how do we define what type of cry? Is the cry urgent? Does it continue to be high-pitched? What we're really interested in is, what if the cry is different to a normal cry? That's when we start to go, okay, there's something else going on here. Let's look at it. It's the tone, or if they're feeling excessively weak or something like that. So there are other reasons for a baby crying excessively and sleeplessness, and that can be if they've had a traumatic or difficult birth and they've got the membranes around the head are excessively tight, and that causes a sort of low-grade irritability where they're kind of irritable all day, and it's not necessarily gut-related. Babies can be irritable post-vaccinations. They tend to have a little bit of a temperature at the same time. But I suppose what we're wanting to do is rule out what is normal, work out what is normal crying and what is crying due to real pain or a real medical issue. And it comes with knowing the baby. Each baby's different, and the more babies you have, it comes with. But the point I would say is, if you're concerned, see the doctor. If you're concerned, see someone like me as well. Get the baby evaluated to see if there's any problems there, if there is an excess of crying, because it's the hardest thing in the world to have your baby crying. And I spend much of my time actually with incredibly distressed parents who they don't know what to do with a baby if they say they have severe reflux and the baby's crying all the time. It's an absolute nightmare. And to get these things ironed out as quickly as possible, I think, is a priority. Anyway, I wish you well and some sleep if you're a newborn mother. Okay, best wishes.